My name is Mitch Wells. I go by Mitch Michelle because there's way too many Mitch Wells out there making music. And tonight, what I'm hoping to do is quickly show you some basics about recording in Cubase, how to record a guitar track without an amp and actually make it sound like something, and maybe even show you some of the options that are available to you in terms of plugins to record guitar. I have done a lot of things. Among those things, I had a recording studio in the early 2000s, a fairly large studio in the area. Recorded hundreds of acts. And not that I know everything, I certainly don't. In fact, I'm only here because a couple of people suggested that maybe I should do something like this, so here we go. And I'll tell you, there's no right way or wrong way to do it. Anything in any DAW. It is what works best for you, what you can make work, and if you're happy with the sound that you get at the end of it. So, having said that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart Cubase here and do a new setup from square one, tell you everything I'm doing as I do it. I won't be able to tell you everything until I get the mic back in, of course. But here we go. Let me close out this. Okay, and I'm back. Now let me just tell you what I just did so I understand all that. I started a new project. One of the most important things about Cubase, and probably any DAW, certainly the ones I've encountered, is that you make sure that for every project you set the directory first before you do anything if you don't want to lose files. Now, if you're brand new to Cubase, you've never used it before, it's pretty basic stuff. Just File menu, New Project. There's also the hub, and the hub has a Create Empty down here at the bottom. You see that? And whenever you do that, it's going to come up and ask you for a directory. Set it, and make sure that you use a directory that's unique for that song. Otherwise, you will lose tracks. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is something that's unique to Cubase. I am using a Steinberg interface. And one of the cool things about Steinberg interfaces, in fact, what I'm using is a UR44. And by the way, while this is live, if anyone at all is watching, you're certainly welcome to use the chat to ask me questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. One of the things that's unique about Cubase is that, and the Steinberg interface, is that it has hardware inside the interface that allows you to do certain things. Obviously, you can get inputs and outputs at low latency. But another thing it does is it has what they call the DSP-FX chip. The DSP-FX chip allows you to do what I'm about to do now. I'm going to turn on some real-time hardware compression and EQ. And what this does is, there we go, it will compress my signal so I'm not crushing the signal anymore. It'll add a little more high end. And the cool thing about this is this little selector right here will allow me to use that in the headphones only, or to record it with whatever input I'm using. So you can record effects while you're monitoring. If you don't have a system that has low latency, but you do have a Steinberg interface, you can always use reverb, compression, EQ as you're recording, and add that to your recorded track. If you don't know what compression, EQ, and a reverb are, if you stick with me long enough throughout this and whatever tutorials I do, you will quickly learn. Okay, so now we've got our microphone set up. Got some EQ on it. Let's start talking about adding a guitar. In most modern interfaces, and when I say modern, I mean maybe within the last 3 or 5 years, that are USB or Firewire. Well, not Firewire anymore, but a Thunderbolt. Programs like this will measure the latency, and the latency is how long it takes a signal to get from your interface to the computer, and then from the computer back to your interface. And the programs use that measurement to determine how fast it's going to take to get a real-time output. Now, let me show you. If you go to Studio, and every program is going to have something like this. It's going to have a way to connect your inputs, your outputs, and monitor them. In this particular version of Cubase, it has something called the Studio menu. In previous versions, I think they just called it Connections. To be honest with you, I don't remember, but it's there. And you'll see something called Studio Setup. In the Studio Setup, you choose your interface. You'll see here I have a lot of interfaces listed. One of the things you can do with most interfaces is this. You can turn on direct monitoring. What direct monitoring does is it completely bypasses what's going on in the computer and just gives you output from whatever you've plugged in straight to your headphones or straight to your speakers, whatever you've got attached to your interface. When you have direct monitoring on, you can't add effects from the program. However, if you turn direct monitoring off, whatever signal you're putting into your audio interface, whether you're using a Focusrite or whether you're using a PreSonus, doesn't really matter. That input goes through your system, and you are allowed at that point in time to add plugins, and then you can hear the effect of the plugin on your output. Latency determines whether you'll be able to hear it in something close to real time, or whether there'll be a delay. If you've tried to do this before, if you've tried to record guitar into your system using a plugin like Helix or Waves GTR or any number of those, and it seems like when you play you get a delay no matter what you do, that's latency, and I'm going to show you how to fix that. That is assuming that you can fix it. I mean, if your system's really slow or your interface is really slow or both, what you're going to get is the best you're going to get. And I've found that with older interfaces especially, the latency is not that fast. Now, if you look right here, this is saying my input latency is 4 milliseconds, my output latency is 5 milliseconds. So that is essentially live monitoring. I mean, if I plug in an effect, I'm going to show you this here. If I plug an effect into this microphone, you're going to hear it. But how do we switch that? Okay, well, I can't tell you in every program. You'll have to find it for yourself, but I can tell you in Cubase. Once you're using the interface that you have, go here and then go to Control Panel, and it shows you your latency options. I have seen interfaces that don't go any lower than 256 samples, and that's probably about a 10 to 12 millisecond turnaround, and that's when you actually start to hear a delay. If you get down below 100 milliseconds, 100 samples, you will be in the low latency territory. I believe that if I go down to 128 here, I probably get about 6 milliseconds. There's a delay, but it's not really enough to notice. And then down at 96 samples, well, when you get down to 400 milliseconds, it's not really a delay anymore. As hopefully you'll see. Okay. So hopefully you understood that. If you didn't, please leave something in the comments, or if you're watching the live stream, which apparently there's a few people watching, send me a comment. I'll be glad to answer them. If you see me glancing over there, it's because I've got an iPad over there that's got the live stream on it, so I can see if anybody chats with me at all. Okay, so there's how you get set your system up for low latency. Theoretically here, you're going to hear this. Let's just add something to the microphone. How about a reverb? Here's Waves reverb. There we go. Now you see I'm turning it to dry, and you're hearing it in real time. I'm speaking. There's no delay between my speaking and what you're hearing. Now if I turn the reverb up, boop, 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 you'll hear that there's almost no delay at all, which is the way it's supposed to work. In fact, what I'm going to do here, because I've got a fan running in the background, And I'll go through that again so you get to see where to put all that stuff in. I'm going to add a gate. So this E right here brings up your channel strip. This is where you do things like EQ, add effects, add cues and sends, which send effects, we'll get into at some later time. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a gate. In case you don't know what a noise gate does, it shuts off all sounds that come into it at a certain level. So if I stop talking, hear how the fan disappeared? I won't, make it quite so severe, but that's what it does. And that's really useful if you got guitar, especially because if you want to get rid of the hum when you're not playing, a noise gate's pretty crucial, especially if you're getting hum. And one of the things I've noticed about DAWs in a general way is if you're in a small, say, situation where you don't have a room or whatever, where you don't really have a lot of control over what current you're getting, your monitor and what it puts out, you're close to your monitor. If your guitar is right up here, a lot of times you start to get some kind of weird feedback, strangeness, hum from coming off your computer and your monitor. Well, that's where a gate comes in, because it's going to make sure that, anything that's below a certain level just gets completely shut off, so you don't really notice it. Just the only thing I'm going to talk to you about here about the gate is just adjusting the threshold. The threshold is basically where it turns off and on. Low threshold is on all the time. Higher the threshold is, the more it turns off. Release is how fast it goes to 0 after signals come in. That's as much as I'm going to say about gates right now. I'll be glad to say more at a different date, but that's what I'm going to say for today. So I'll throw a gate in there. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to get a guitar signal up here, or a track rather. So let's add a stereo track. To add a new track to Cubase, right click. You can also do this. This plus sign right here adds a track. It's fastest just to right click in this area right here. And by the way, if you're not using Cubase 9, let's say you're using Cubase 8, and it looks more like this, that's fine. You can still right click in this area and add a track. I'm going to add a stereo track. All right. Let me get back to what I had here. There. Because I happen to like the way that works. Also, let's make sure I've done this. My audio connections, I have. Another thing that you might want to do with your audio interface, especially if you have more than one input on your audio interface, and mine has 4, is to go to Studio and pick audio connections and set up your inputs and outputs. If you go to outputs, it allows you to choose which outputs you have on your interface connected to your speakers, or it's going to your headphone, whatever. Inputs, if you have more than 2 inputs, 2 will usually just come up as default. If not, you can always right click and pick stereo, and when you pick stereo, you get inputs. And it'll usually use the first 2 that are available. If you add a mono input, you can choose whichever input you want to be that particular mono. Here I'm using number 3 of 4 on my mic inputs in the front of my UR44. Hopefully that all makes sense. If you're going too fast or you don't understand something, please leave it in the comments. Okay, so now I've added a track. It is a stereo input track. I'm going to use this to record guitar, so let's just label it. I'll throw it up above here. Whoops. Let's throw it up above this one. So I know this is strictly for monitoring. This one's going to be for our recording purposes. If I didn't have to speak to you, I would not have this track. But because I do, I have to have it. Okay, so I've got that. Let's get a guitar input going. I'm going to grab my SG, so give me a second. Okay, so there's my guitar. Got it here. Actually, if you look right here at my stereo input, you're going to see it. See where my mouse arrow is, and you see the input going up and down on the left-hand side. I have my input set to about 10 o'clock. That's what I get. If I turn my monitoring on, you're going to hear it with no effects. Yay! Got a crappy sounding dry guitar. Neat. Okay, so now let's add a guitar effect. And we'll run through some. The E that you see here, that I picked here for the gate, is the same on every channel. In this particular instance, it's here. It's also up here. So I'm going to use this one. Okay, so now there's the channel settings that I showed you before that have EQ, compression, gate. We're going to ignore all that stuff right now and just get a guitar plugin up here. Okay, let me take an aside, one quick one here. If you wanted to tune your guitar and you didn't have a tuner already hooked up, one of the things that you can do is there are various tuners, including this is the one that comes with Cubase, I believe. There it is. And if I play, you'll see that it actually works as a tuner. So that is, in fact, an effect that you add. Even though it's not really an effect, it's a tuner. So let's start out with the PRS models, because I really like those. These are the Waves PRS models. I'm going to pick a mono stereo model. You notice that now I'm no longer in mono one side. I've got kind of a clean sound, I guess. We could change that. There's a tuner built into this one. I don't know that I'm super hip on their tuner. It does have a gate built into it, however, and I will use that. The gate works exactly the same, except for this one, all you set is the threshold. Okay. Now I've got various amp models here. Let's, I have no idea what I'm going to play, but so instead let me just run through some amp models so you can hear them. I know you're hearing my guitar through the microphone as well. I can take the time to mute that, but I'm lazy, so I'm not going to. I'll do it once just so you can see that, you know, that is affecting the sound. I'll turn it off and on as time permits so you can hear different amp sims without having to hear the microphone. So let's find something a little bit dirtier, right? So why not? Mic off. That's really going to bug me, so I'm going to switch that. So one of the things that just happened is my input has turned red. So I need to turn my input down on my interface. That's got nothing to do with the amp, by the way. That is strictly the input at my interface. And if you start seeing red lights, turn it down because clipping is bad. Okay, now I'm on the bridge pickup, by the way. Still just a little bit hot, so I'll probably need to turn it down just a tad. I'm inching my way down a little bit at a time until I got it as hot as I can get it. Without clipping. This little guy right here is kind of an auto input. When I click it, it listens. See it change the input here in a second? Yeah, just turn it up. There's a little bit of the PRS model. I think this is the one they're known for, right? The Archon. Neck pickup. I almost have to turn off the mic every time for you to really hear it, which is just going to be a giant pain in the ass, but hey, I'll do it. Here's clean with a coil tap. Okay, so now I'm just giving you a little taste of these things. Here, let's hear something with some gain. I'm going to give it a bridge pickup in humbucker. Let's do one more here. Then I'm going to compare this to Helix. Now, notice I'm not adjusting anything. I mean, I could start adjusting stuff on these amps, but it's going to take all kinds of time for me to dial in a sound I like, so I'm just going to demo a few and then try to record a track. So, you know, it has all the same kind of controls that you would expect to see on an amplifier, except that there's also mic controls as well, and those are kind of here. You can choose what kind of mic you're using, whether it's on axis or off axis. And if you want to use a 2-mic setup, you can choose to mix between the mics. I mean, you know, everybody's got a different opinion about it, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you which sounds good, which sounds bad. I'm just going to play some of the stock settings and let you kind of decide for yourself, because at least through the stock settings, you'll get some idea of what you're going to get if you buy that particular plugin. What's important to me is that you see how to use it. Okay, so, done that. Let's try some Helix stuff. Now, Helix also has a gate. There it is. Let's hear a clean tone. I'll turn this up a little bit. Turn the mic off. Might help if I was actually clicking the right track, huh? Truthfully, as far as the clean presets on this thing, most of them are kind of crunchy. There's not really anything that's just flat out clean on this one except that one, and they've got sort of a jazz chorus here someplace if I can find it. No guarantees I'm going to find it. Oh, there it is. Here it is without the mic. Just kind of using the basic settings so you can hear what it does. Okay, so let's do some distortion. I'm going to switch over to bridge pickup. And let's start with a German model. You do have to turn the gate on for every patch, which I don't really care for. Okay, how about a PV model, 5150? Now, I won't spend too much time on these things. I'm just trying to give you some idea of the differences in the plugs. And hopefully you hear them. I mean, these plugs, they all really have their own sound, regardless of the fact that they're supposed to be emulating some of the same amplifiers. I think this does actually have an Archon in here. It's not like we're going to get, you know, apples to apples here, but this is about as close as we're going to get. Gates on. Mic's off. Now, by the way, I don't claim to be a guitarist or anything like that. I'm just showing you the differences, so don't get overly critical. Okay, so now one of the things that you can also choose, that I have access to, and that you can usually get pretty cheap, and I'll give you a little hint here. I have a lot of Waves plugins because one of the things that Waves does constantly is every plugin they've ever made, they've had on sale for 29 bucks. So regardless of how much that plugin is, or whether it's in a package and how expensive that package is, if you just wait, you'll be able to get every Waves plugin that they make for 29 bucks. So I have a lot of Waves plugins. And this is one thing I do like about their standard kind of guitar plugin setup, is that it's got a lot of effects. And they're decent sounding effects. I mean, Helix has more effects, and that's cool. But I have to be honest and say, I kind of like the sound of the GTR effects better myself. So you get an amp here. That's a tuner, actually. Their tuner sucks. Here's an amp. Actually, get a dual amp setup with a dual mic setup, which is kind of cool. And then you have your stomp boxes, like a compressor. like an echo. Okay, delay, there we go. There we go. Now, if you want that sort of weird 70s clean that's just like annoyingly clean, this is your plugin. Presets, honestly, there's nothing special on this one either. But I will say this. I mean, if you want certain sounds and certain effects, this thing still got its uses. Let's see if I can't find some kind of decent distortion. I can't even guarantee I'll find one here because I don't know if they're not organized well. Yeah, not that great sound and stuff, but cool for an effect. No doubt. Oh, I'm sure if they, somebody from Waves was standing here, they'd say, pick this one, pick that one, use this setting. Whatever. I mean, if you can't find what you're looking for easily, it's a little bit annoying anyway. But, hey, you know what? 29 bucks. That's actually really, really cheap. Oh, I'm not going to find anything here. Okay, so one last one I'll show you is the one that actually comes with Cubase, because if that's all you've got is Cubase, that's the one you're going to want to know about, right? Here it is. There's an amp sim, but the amp rack is probably what you want, because that's going to have a whole bunch of presets. And, presets are cool, right? Right. Yeah, maybe that's the sound you've been looking for. And I would not criticize you for that. So yeah, I've shown you a few models. Now let's get into, I'm going to back up a bit, and we're just going to record some guitar. So now that I've kind of ran through a few models real quick, let's go back to the PRS and record some clean guitar. Hopefully you've been able to follow me up to this point to know where I'm at. What I've done is I've plugged in my guitar to my interface. I have set up a track by right-clicking and picking New Audio Track. I made it a stereo track, but I'm only using the left input of my interface as the input. I've adjusted my input on my interface so I'm not pegging the needle here, but I'm getting a good signal. Then, because I set my latency low enough that I can get away with doing this, I have added a guitar plugin, and I'm monitoring through the plugin in real time. So I can change this plugin, like if I want to add reverb right now. Turn all the way up, and I don't care much for that reverb, but that doesn't matter. And actually, if I want more stereo out of my track, I can turn up the air. Here's less. Not sure if you can hear the difference, but it's a slight difference, but it's there. Okay, let's go with that. All right, so now let's now that we've done that, let's get a metronome up. We can just clean this stuff right off the screen, doesn't even matter. Oh, let's do one thing that we did before. Let's add our gate to the guitar. I like to set about there. Okay, so I've got my guitar. Now, let's set our metronome. I'm sure you probably saw that there's tempo down here at the bottom if you have that turned on. If not, if you hit F2, you'll get this. And by the way, when I brought up that mixer to add my effect, that's F3. So you have this gigantic, big, full screen mixer if you want it, or get rid of it. And F2 gives you this guy, and I'm sure every program has its own hotkeys for things like this. Well, in Cubase, it's F2 and F3. What I'm going to do is turn off my cycle because it shouldn't even be on. And let's set our tempo. Here's another cool thing about Cubase. It's got a beat calculator. It's on a project. Click it, and we hit tap tempo. I'm hitting the space bar right now. Maybe a little bit slower than that. Sure, let's go for a 99, 100. So let's just set it for 100. Now, this thing right here, that's your tempo track. I'm not going to explain a tempo track right now, but what I am going to tell you is that if your song is in one tempo from start to finish, turn it off. Just click it and turn it off. If you plan to have more than one tempo, okay. Maybe I'll explain that sometime in the future. Okay, so let's set our tempo for 100. Yeah, 100, 100. There we go. So I've set my tempo. Now I can turn my metronome on right here. This is also hitting C on the keyboard. Turns the metronome on. I have my metronome set so it plays the entire time it's on, whether it's in play or record. I believe you set that up under transport. Metronome setup. And then you can say, I want click replaying while recording during count in, how many bars of count in you want. This time it's set for 2 and that's fine. Okay, so now I've got a metronome and I have a tempo. Okay, so now to record. I'm just going to lay that down, cut it up, cut and paste it, show you how to cut and paste to the beat, and how to duplicate it so I can make a segment and loop it. So I've got my metronome going. This little guy right here, as you probably know if you've ever used anything audio-wise, this is your record enable. Every program has all the things I'm showing you. I mean, I've used Sonar and Pro Tools and Reaper. They all do all of this. All you need to do is figure out where it is. Once you've seen this, you can do what I'm doing with any program, as long as you've got the plugins, obviously. So record. Going to let it go 2 measures before I actually play anything, and then I'm just going to start playing. So let's throw it in record. Notice my mic's still on, but it's not recording. Okay, so let's hope that I actually got one of those right. I like to do this. This arrow right here allows me to color the track, so let's just turn it red. Go back to the beginning. That's what that is right there. Hint, you can also hit 1 on your keyboard if this guy is set to the beginning. If you hit 1, it'll go to wherever it starts. So let's listen to that. And the way we listen to it is by turning the monitoring off. Now when I play guitar, you see it's still at the input and stereo in. Right here. But I'm not hearing it because the monitoring here has been switched off. And if you're trying to figure out why you can't hear yourself when you've done all these things, my friend, that's the first place to look. Look to see if you have the monitor enabled or disabled. Okay, so let's listen to what we just did. Spacebar or Enter will give you play. Okay, let me tell you what I'm doing here. Notice I went from the arrow to the scissors. What I'm doing is I'm slicing up my track in segments to decide which segment I like the best. Let's listen to it from the beginning again. Hit 1 to go back. Press play to start. Spacebar. I can even cut it here. Cut it into all the into 4-bar sections, and I'll decide which four bars I like the most. Let's listen to the first one. Actually, that one's pretty good. So let's see how that works when I try to loop it. Select that segment that I just cut off. Hold down the Alt key if you want to duplicate it, and then click and drag. Alt allows you to do that. Select 2. Hold down the Alt key. Click and drag. Boom. Now I got a whole bunch of the same thing, right? See how it loops. Did you hear it? There's a double oomph right at the bar crossing, so that's not going to do. So let's just undo everything. Let's listen to the next one. We can just get rid of these. I just did Control Z, by the way, to undo. That's a Windows key command that works with almost everything. In fact, I hardly found anything in Windows that runs under Windows 10 that it doesn't work with anymore. Control Z undoes. Undoes. So now let's copy the second one, see how that goes. And get it. And we'll just copy one of them. We don't need to. Alright, we're going to listen to it. Here it comes again. Now I'm keeping the first one. I'll tell you why in a minute. Still got that, don't we? Yep. Can't do that one. Let's try number 3 and see if it makes any... Now, there's a way to fix all this. I'm going to show you that. But for now, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Let's listen to 3. Whoops. I don't want to do that. Well, you know what? I'm going to use that one. So let's get rid of number 2. I'm going to keep number 1. I'll tell you why. Alt, drag it over. Because number 1 is going to give us kind of our intro leading up to the beat. So that means that it's always going to be the way I play it without a glitch when the song first starts out. Okay, so now you ask yourself a couple of questions watching me. First of all, why is this locking to the beat? How are you dragging things around? Let me just give you the quick lowdown on this. Whenever you hover the mouse over a segment, which we made with the scissors, or even just the main entire uncut segment, get these little boxes. This one allows you to drag the length. This one's for fade outs and fade ins, which I'm actually going to add a fade in a minute. And I'm going to show you how to use that. This is for the fade out over here. This little guy right here is actually for volume. You can drag it up or down and change the volume of any particular segment. What I'm going to do here is this is my grid. This is locking me to the beat. Or to the bar, rather. That's the reason why I go on. If I want to change that, I can change this to beat, and now it'll be locked to the beat. And I'm going to give it one extra beat there, if you see what I'm doing. It's my intro that I had, but I've only got one beat of it and a fade in, so I don't have any noise. Here it is. Okay, now this little guy right here will change how big things are in your window, and this one changes them this way, right? Let's get that. If you didn't, now you do. What I'm going to do is this one is going to stay the same, and all 3 of these after this one are this track. What I'm going to do here, well, just watch. Turn off my grid, snap, and I'm going to drag this just a little bit this way. See how it snakes underneath? You see how it gives you that hash line look? It's actually, they're overlapping now. Now, select them and hit X on your keyboard. And what I just did is gave it a crossfade. And the crossfade should fix any bleeps. Did you hear how it changed? Let me do it again. Grab it here, drag it slightly. I want to make sure that I've gotten the entire start of the second. Maybe you can see that, maybe you can't. The entire start of this little wave right here, which is my beginning of my segment again. And I don't want to cut off, but I don't want to click in between those tracks. Crossfade will do it. So X, go down here, select it again. Well, that's all we have. So, okay, here's our track now. I'm going to loop this guy. Let's turn that back on. So we set our loops at exactly the beat. And this guy right here loops. And if you're curious about how I got this, your screen might look like this when you first turn it on in Cubase. There we go. It probably has this guy right here. Just grab him, drag. Make sure this is your snap to grid. Drag. And by the way, you can choose what segment of the grid it snaps to. Now I'm snapping to the bar. Hopefully you saw where I picked that. And then I'm going to bring this to my loop point, which is going to be the beginning again. Let's see how they do. Notice it went there when I hit 1. So I'm going to go in there. That takes me all the way back to the beginning, so I get to hear the intro as well. Let's turn off our metronome so there's no annoyance there. There's a click there. Really shouldn't be though, because those tracks kind of went one into the next, but we'll fix that. Regardless, that's weird that there's a click there. There should not be. So let's fix it. Or yeah, you know what? I used the third one. That's right. I forgot I did use the third one. So let's move that there. Crossfade that. There. That'll fix it. Let's hear it again, just to make sure we fixed it. Notice the click is gone now. It's very easy to crossfade sections in Cubase. Hear how natural that sounds now? Now let's see how our loop is. This will be kind of the... Well, it's going to click at the loop. So now I have the choice. I mean, you know, I set loops up basically so I can rehearse to them and record parts and hear how parts go together. When I make a finished version of the song, I don't loop anything using the loop function. I just copy and paste and then do my crossfade, so I never get that click. And that's what I recommend you do too. Again, if you're not sure you understood what I'm saying, please leave me a comment and I will try to explain it in a better way. So I have my guitar loop. I'm going to leave it looping with a little click there for now because I just want something to rehearse to and to record to. And when I decide the finished length later, well, I'll go ahead and copy my segments and do my crossfades, and it should sound perfect. So before I start adding some effects, let's just add another guitar. I'm going to try and keep it simple here. So here's the process from start to finish. Open area, right click, add audio track, stereo, calls guitar 2. If I can do this with my guitar on. Okay. I'm going to change the color of it just because I'm anal like that. And then I'm going to add another clean channel here. I believe I used the PRS, and I did, so here, let's use Helix. Right? Why not? Let's get this thing out of my way. F2, get rid of that. There's Helix. I'm just going to go ahead and use this clean for now. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time tweaking things. What I will do is turn this reverb down because this reverb is a little annoying. Okay, so we've got this up, got that up. Let's make sure we like the sound. I'm going to switch into a single coil. Looking at my input there, could probably go up a little bit. Turning monitoring on. And I'm actually going to turn the gate on for this program. Oh, it is on. Look at that. Okay. The single coil, when you tap it, has less output, so it makes it a little bit more. Yeah, good enough, whatever. Okay, so let's record. Turn my loop. Can't do it. Doesn't matter. I could get all critical about it. I'm not going to. I don't care. So we've got something. And I know what I just did is probably going to confuse you, but when you're in loop, and I should have turned it off, it just starts recording again, and it'll record over it, and record over it, and record over it. So if you want to track a bunch of tracks in loop, you can actually do that. And there is a function in Cubase, right here it is, that every track you record, it'll have in its own lane. I'm not going to get into that tonight. Let's just keep it simple. So let's find one that sounds okay and go with it. Okay, so let's just use that first, that up to that point, because it's, you know, turn my, it's like, yeah, not great or anything, because I'm not great, but it doesn't matter because I'm just showing you this. So we're going to do the whole cutting looping thing again here with this track, right? So first thing I did before was I changed I have my lock to grid on, stamp to grid on. I'm going to change this to a beat and put the first intro here one beat before and turn on my fade in. So I know that that's always going to sound good no matter what. Now I'm going to go back to the bar, cut this, right? I'm going to Alt-click to copy it. Now, I guarantee you there's going to be a glitch here. I don't even have to listen to know that. Because you can see it, right? Look, if I zoom in, you can see that that's super duper funky. But I'm going to show you the beauty again of crossfades. Turn your snap off, back this guy off, put this guy here, crossfade those two, fixed. Here it is. And we can turn off our click, we don't need that. Well, you know, we knew the transition was going to suck. But again, that doesn't really matter because ultimately what you would do is you would copy it again, loop it, do a crossfade. I mean, the timing's off and all that, but you know what? It doesn't even matter, right? I mean, I'm just kind of showing you what's going on here. So let's do this. And in case you were curious what I was doing here, crossfading, so it goes to 0. So when it starts over again, we're not getting a glitch at the end of this track. Hopefully you understood that. By the way, these little guys right here on the sides allow you, and I believe they have these in previous versions of Cubase too. You can zoom to locators, you can zoom in, you can zoom into 5 milliseconds, like something crazy, or there, or I think you get the idea, 10 seconds. But we'll just do that. Okay, so now I've got 2 tracks recorded. The last thing I'm going to do is show you how I would treat those tracks. Okay? So give me 1 second to take this guitar off because it is incredibly annoying. And I'm going to show you the beauty of low latency. Because not only am I going to add some effects to this track, I'm also going to do this. Notice I'm on my master output. In case you weren't sure, this last guy in the line is your master output. I'm going to put a brick limiter on here. And what that's going to do is make sure that my signal never clips. It won't allow it to. And again, you can see that I'm adding this thing and it's working in real time. What I just did was I turned on the auto release function, which actually is pretty useful on the Steinberg brick limiter. And it defaults to 3 dB below 0, which means that your song will, if it hits the limiter, it'll always be 3 dB lower than it could be. But if you go to 0, you do stand the chance of it having weirdness on some players, so I go to -0.1. Which means that it's going to be -0.1 dB below whatever the maximum is for your system. Or the maximum digital is what I should say. It's not a system-related thing. My bad. Okay, so I've done that. Now, I'm going to throw on a channel. One of the things I really like is the SSL channels. Because I like the compressors. The compressors have auto gain. What that means is that when I turn it on and it's doing its compression, it's always going to make sure that the end gain result is the same as what you started with. I'm not going to explain compressors here. I'm just going to show you what I do. I'm going to explain compressors at a different date if there's any interest in all that. I mean, this is a one-time thing for now, but hopefully people will show some interest so I can do that. So I'm going to set my ratio for guitars to 2 to 2.5. In this particular case, I'm going to set it to 2.5 in this one. And I'm going to let it play. This is showing you gain reduction right here. Fast attack, because what I'm trying to do is I want the guitar to maintain the attack that it has but have a little bit more sustain, and that's one of the things that in theory compressors will do for you. You can also see I'm not adding very much. I'm getting about a 3 dB gain reduction. If I want to add some EQ, I can do it here. But I kind of like the SSL compressors. I gave it a little bit of bite. I also like to do this. I just throw a low-pass filter at 80 Hertz. So if there is some weirdness that I don't notice, it gets filtered out. What I mean to say is that if there's a low-end buzz or hum or boop or bloop, hopefully that got rid of it. Now, if you're curious what I'm doing with this EQ, let's just turn it up. Just adding a little presence. And let's give it a little stereo image too. Okay, one last thing I'll do. Give it a little bit of room. I really like the reverb, the room reverb. Impulse reverb that comes in Cubase. Hopefully you can see that I'm turning it off and on, just kind of adjusting it, just to make it sound a little bit more like it was recorded in a room. Let's go to 8. Let's do the same thing on this guitar. Certainly don't need any presence for this guitar, but I definitely need some room. There's without, there's with. Now you might say to yourself, okay, you just added 2 reverbs that are doing the same exact thing. Why do I gotta add 2 reverbs when I could just add 1? And that would be a good point. So here's the last thing I'm going to show you for the night. How to set up an effects channel. Right click, Add effects channel. Let's find that plugin. Now I'm going to use the same. It seems weird that I'm switching back and forth, but I have determined that the LA Studio default is not the same as the LA Studio that brings up in the menu. So there we go. We can get rid of these reverbs here. Okay, I've gotten rid of those. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this area over here, the sends, to send it to the effects channel that we just set up. Click it, turn it on, turn it down, because otherwise you're just going to get nothing but crazy saturated reverb. Let's listen. Same thing for this track. Turn it on. You can always mute the reverb to hear what it sounds without. Now, that may be too much reverb by the time you get drums in. Everything else may not be enough. I think the point is that it's there to be used with those instruments and any others that you add if you put it in an effects channel. Any instrument you add, any mic you add, like for instance, if I want to use it on my mic, that's cool. Just go here, go there. Now, there it is. I'm in a room. I can turn it back down to here. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Yeah, or I can just turn it off. And there we have it. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have for you tonight. I'm going to save this, and I'll use this next time. So, as we build a track, together you and I, if there is a next time, we can build on this. And with that, I bid you adieu. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments. I'll try my best to answer them. Hopefully you found this somewhat helpful. And have a good night.